Case 7. Susan Edwards, Mansfield, England. Neighbors last saw William and Patricia Wycherley alive on the May Day bank holiday weekend of 1998. Then they simply vanished. No goodbyes, no forwarding address, just gone. Over the years, friends and distant relatives occasionally received letters or cards, supposedly from the Wycherleys, claiming they had moved away or gone traveling. The messages were brief, vague, but believable enough. People get older, they downsize, they relocate. Life moves on. So no one pressed too hard, no one demanded proof, and no one heard their voices again. But money kept moving. 15 years later, in 2013, the truth emerged, and it was far darker than anyone imagined. William and Patricia Wycherley hadn't moved away, they hadn't gone traveling. They had been shot and buried in the back garden of their Mansfield home. And the people who killed them? Their own daughter, Susan Edwards, and her husband, Christopher. After the murders, Susan and Christopher embarked on one of the longest and most audacious cons in British criminal history. They forged signatures. They diverted the couple's pensions and benefits. They intercepted mail. They sent fake letters and cards to keep up the illusion that William and Patricia were alive and well. And eventually they sold the house, pocketing roughly $285,000 over 15 years. You'd think that kind of money would fund a lavish lifestyle. Mansions, luxury cars, exotic vacations. But that's not what happened. Susan and Christopher lived modestly. They didn't draw attention. Instead, they obsessively spent on collectibles, Western film memorabilia, celebrity autographs, rare posters. The money funded a fantasy world more than a high-rolling lifestyle. It was escapism, a way to live in fiction while two bodies rotted beneath the soil. The scheme began to unravel when Susan, in financial distress and perhaps under the psychological pressure of years of secrecy, reached out to a relative. Maybe guilt was creeping in, maybe the weight of the lie was too much. Whatever the reason, that relative alerted authorities. And when police finally did a deeper check on the supposedly globe-trotting Wycherleys, red flags went up everywhere. A search of the Mansfield garden uncovered 2 skeletons buried in the soil beneath the patio. Forensic work matched them to William and Patricia, confirming they had been killed back in 1998, 15 years earlier. 15 years of fake letters, 15 years of stolen pensions, 15 years of living off 2 people already in the ground. At trial in 2014, prosecutors painted Susan and Christopher as calculating and greedy, willing to erase 2 lives to access their income streams. The couple tried to offer a more complex story, suggesting past abuse, arguing self-defense, minimizing premeditation. They claimed William had been violent, that the shooting was reactive, that they panicked and didn't know what to do. But the jury didn't buy it. The evidence was too clear, the planning too deliberate. You don't accidentally forge signatures for 15 years. You don't accidentally sell someone's house while their body is buried in the backyard. You don't accidentally cash pension checks month after month, year after year, knowing full well the person is dead. Both Susan and Christopher were convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. Susan later appealed, arguing the trial was unfair, that the jury was biased, that the evidence didn't support premeditated murder. The appeal was rejected. The conviction stood. As of 2025, both remain in UK prisons. Their earliest theoretical release is still years away. And even if they ever do get out, they'll be elderly, broken, and forever marked as the couple who killed her parents and lived off their corpses for over a decade. What makes the Edwards case particularly haunting isn't just the murder. It's the duration of the deception. 15 years. That's longer than some marriages, longer than most jobs, longer than a lot of people stay in one city. For 15 years, Susan and Christopher woke up every day knowing 2 people were buried in a garden. And they carried on as if nothing had happened. They sent Christmas cards in William and Patricia's names. They signed documents. They cashed checks. They lied to family, to friends, to the government. And all the while, they were spending money that didn't belong to them, funding a fantasy life built on a foundation of murder. William and Patricia Wycherley were in their 80s when they were killed. They should have had more years, more holidays, more time with family. Instead, they got bullets and a shallow grave. And their daughter, someone who should have cared for them in their final years, became the person who ended them. Susan and Christopher Edwards didn't kill in a moment of rage. They didn't snap. They planned. They executed, and then they profited. For 15 years, they got away with it. But in the end, the lie collapsed. The bodies were found. And justice, delayed as it was, finally arrived. As of 2025, the Wycherleys are still in the ground, and Susan and Christopher Edwards are still in prison. That's where they belong. Case 8, Jennifer Pan, Markham, Ontario, November 8, 2010. 24-year-old Jennifer Pan dialed 911 in a trembling voice. She said armed intruders had broken into her family's home. Her mother, 53-year-old Bitch Ha Pan, was shot dead. Her father, Hui Han Pan, was gravely wounded but alive. Jennifer claimed she had been tied up, helpless, while her parents were attacked. She was the victim, the traumatized survivor, the daughter who had lost everything. The story, home invasion, random violence, is one police in large metropolitan areas hear often. But as detectives examined the scene and Jennifer's demeanor, doubts began to grow. Something didn't add up. The details were too convenient, her injuries too minor, her story too rehearsed. And then they started digging into Jennifer's life. What they found was a web of lies so elaborate, so sustained, that it had taken years to build and one night to collapse. For years, Jennifer had been living a double life. Her Vietnamese immigrant parents pushed her to excel academically and professionally. They had high expectations, straight A's, top universities, a respectable career. The kind of pressure that drives some kids to succeed and others to break. Jennifer broke. But instead of admitting failure or seeking help, she chose deception. She forged report cards. She invented university acceptances. She fabricated an entire educational trajectory. She pretended to attend classes she'd never enrolled in. She even claimed to work in a hospital lab, a job that didn't exist. For years, she maintained this fiction, leaving the house every day as if she were going to school or work, then killing time elsewhere until it was safe to come home. Her parents believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was their daughter. She showed them fake transcripts. She talked about her classes, her professors, her co-workers. She built an entire false reality, and they lived in it with her. But eventually the lies started to unravel. Her parents began to suspect something was wrong. They asked questions, they checked records. And when the truth came out that Jennifer had been lying for years, that she had no degree, no job, no future as they had imagined, they clamped down hard. They cut off her relationship with her boyfriend. They imposed strict rules. They monitored her movements. They tried to regain control. And Jennifer? She didn't come clean. She didn't apologize. She didn't try to rebuild trust. Instead, prosecutors say she began planning their deaths. Phone records revealed meticulous coordination with men hired through her ex-boyfriend's criminal contacts. Jennifer provided details about her parents' routine, the layout of the house, and a plan. It would look like a robbery gone wrong. She would be left alive as the supposedly traumatized survivor. No one would suspect her. She'd be free. But here's the problem with staging a crime. You need everyone to play their part. And Hui Hanpan didn't die. Once he was able to speak, he told investigators something that shattered Jennifer's entire narrative. He said his daughter was not tied up. He said he saw her walking freely with one of the intruders before he was shot. She wasn't a victim. She was part of it. That single statement changed everything. Detectives re-examined the scene with fresh eyes. They pulled phone records. They traced the hired killers. They found text messages, planning, discussions, payments. The evidence was overwhelming. Jennifer hadn't been attacked. She had orchestrated the attack. In 2014, Jennifer Pan was convicted of first-degree murder of her mother and attempted murder of her father. She was sentenced to life in prison with no parole eligibility for 25 years. Her co-conspirators received similar life sentences. It seemed like the end of the story. Justice served. Case closed. But the legal system doesn't always move in straight lines. In 2023, Ontario's Court of Appeal found that the trial judge had mishandled jury instructions about the specific targets and possible lesser offenses. The instructions were confusing. The jury may have been misled, and that's enough to taint a conviction. In 2025, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld that ruling, meaning Jennifer's first-degree murder conviction was set aside, and a new trial was ordered on that charge. Her conviction and life sentence for attempted murder remain in place. She's not walking free. She's still incarcerated at Grand Valley Institution for Women. But the first-degree murder charge, the one that carries the harshest stigma, the one that labels her as someone who planned and executed her mother's death with premeditation, that's back in question. As of 2025, Jennifer Pan is awaiting further proceedings. She may face another trial. She may be reconvicted, or the charge may be reduced. We don't know yet. What we do know is this. Bich Hapan is still dead. Hui Hanpan still carries the trauma of being shot by men his daughter hired. And Jennifer is still in prison where she's been since 2010. Jennifer Pan's case is a stark convergence of immigrant family pressure, personal deception, and a final lethal decision to treat one's own parents as obstacles to be removed. She didn't want to face the consequences of her lies. So instead, she tried to erase the people who knew the truth. Her mother paid with her life. Her father barely survived. And Jennifer, she traded a fake future for a very real life sentence. Case 9. Jasmine Richardson, Medicine Hat, Alberta, April 23, 2006. Police discovered one of the most shocking crime scenes in Canadian history. Inside a quiet suburban home, they found 42-year-old Mark Richardson and 48-year-old Deborah Richardson stabbed to death. In the basement, their 8-year-old son Tyler had also been killed. The family's 12-year-old daughter Jasmine was missing, presumed abducted. Amber alerts went out. Search teams mobilized. Everyone assumed the worst, that a violent intruder had slaughtered a family and taken a child. Within hours, that assumption collapsed. Jasmine was found safe with her 23-year-old boyfriend. Jeremy Steinke. An investigator soon learned the horrifying truth. Not only had Jasmine not been abducted, she had been part of the plot to kill her family. 12 years old. Let that sink in. Most 12-year-olds are worried about homework, friendships, and what's for dinner. Jasmine Richardson was planning a family massacre. Digital communications between Jasmine and Steinke, steeped in goth and vampire subculture language, included blunt references to harming her parents so that they could be together. At one point, Jasmine wrote, "It will begin with me killing them." Not hypothetical, not fantasy roleplay, a plan. They saw her parents' attempts to separate them, not as a predictable, reasonable adult response to a 12-year-old dating a 23-year-old, but as an existential threat, an obstacle that had to be removed. On the night of April 23, 2006, Jeremy Steinke entered the Richardson home. What happened next was brutal and deliberate. Mark and Deborah were stabbed to death. And then, in the basement, 8-year-old Tyler, Jasmine's little brother, was killed. He was 8. He had nothing to do with their relationship. He wasn't trying to keep them apart. He was just a child. But he was a witness, and so he had to die too. Jasmine didn't physically wield the knife for all the killings, but she was there. She participated. She encouraged. She enabled. And after it was done, she left with Jeremy, stepping over the bodies of her family as if they were nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. The digital trail laid out the planning in chilling detail. Text messages, online chats, conversations about how they would do it, when they would do it, and what would happen after. There was no question about guilt. The question was, what do you do with a 12-year-old who helps annihilate her entire family? Because Jasmine was only 12, Canada's Youth Criminal Justice Act strictly limited what could be done. She couldn't be tried as an adult. She couldn't receive an adult sentence. The law recognizes that children, even children who commit horrific acts, are fundamentally different from adults. Their brains aren't fully developed. They're more susceptible to influence. They have greater capacity for change. In 2007, Jasmine was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, but she received the maximum youth sentence, 10 years, including intensive psychological treatment and conditional supervision. 10 years for 3 lives. It outraged many people. It seemed impossibly lenient. But under Canadian law, it was the harshest penalty available for someone her age. Jeremy Steinke, tried as an adult, received life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 25 years. He was the adult. He was the one who should have known better. He was the one who manipulated a child into believing that murder was a solution. Jasmine's sentence concluded in 2016. She was released under a new identity with strict conditions and ongoing supervision. In 2020, her record was sealed as permitted for rehabilitated youth offenders in Canada. She is now living somewhere under a new name. Her past known only to those directly involved in her case and those who remember the headlines. At her final review, a judge said something that still sparks debate. "I think your parents would be proud of you." The statement reflected reports that Jasmine had fully engaged with treatment, earned her education, and shown genuine remorse and transformation. The judge believed she had become a different person, that the 12-year-old who participated in murder was gone, replaced by a young woman who understood the weight of what she had done. To some, her case illustrates the possibility of true rehabilitation, even after unimaginable acts. It's a testament to the idea that children, no matter how far they fall, can be brought back. that punishment isn't always the answer, that healing, accountability, and growth are possible. To others, it remains deeply unsettling. Mark, Deborah, and Tyler Richardson are still dead. They didn't get a second chance. They didn't get to grow, to change, to rebuild. And now the person who helped take their lives is walking free, living under a new identity, with her record erased as if it never happened. Where's the justice in that? Jasmine Richardson is one of the youngest people ever convicted of multiple murders in Canada. Her case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. At what age is someone truly responsible for their actions? Can a 12-year-old really understand the permanence of death? And if we believe in rehabilitation, what does that look like when the crime is this severe? As of 2025, Jasmine is free. Jeremy Steinke is still in prison and won't be eligible for parole until 2033 at the earliest. The Richardson family is gone. And the debate over whether Jasmine deserved a second chance or whether justice was truly served continues. Some crimes are so horrific that forgiveness feels impossible. But the law decided that a 12-year-old, no matter what she did, deserved the chance to become someone different. Whether that was mercy or a mistake depends on who you ask. What's the weather like where you are? Sunny? Rainy? Snowing? Let us know in the comments section. Case 10. Clara Jane Schwartz. Leesburg, Virginia, December 2001. Police found the body of Dr. Robert Schwartz, a respected DNA and biometrics researcher, inside his rural home. He had been attacked with a long blade, essentially a sword, and suffered multiple deep wounds. The brutality was shocking. The weapon was unusual, and the killer was not a random intruder. He was part of the social circle of Robert's 20-year-old daughter, Clara Jane Schwartz, who was away at college when her father was murdered. Clara had become deeply involved in role-playing and vampire-themed communities. These weren't just casual hobbies, they were immersive, all-consuming worlds where fantasy and reality began to blur. And within those worlds, Clara started telling a story about her father. She told her friends that he was abusing her, that he was poisoning her, that she needed to escape, that he was a threat to her very survival. Investigators later argued that Clara used the framework of a fantasy game called Underworld to manipulate vulnerable friends, especially 18-year-old Kyle Holbert, who had significant mental health struggles, into believing that killing Robert was some kind of justified mission. Not murder, not a crime, a quest, a necessary act to save her. But the evidence showed Clara's motives weren't just about escape. She had been researching inheritance. She had talked about what would happen when her father was gone. She had discussed money. This wasn't just a girl trapped in an abusive home looking for a way out. This was someone who saw her father as an obstacle and his death as an opportunity. On December 8th, 2001, Kyle Holbert went to Robert Schwartz's home. He brought a sword, and he attacked Robert with it, killing him with multiple deep, devastating wounds. Clara wasn't physically present during the murder. She didn't swing the blade, but prosecutors argued she had orchestrated the entire plot. She had planted the idea, she had nurtured it, she had convinced Kyle that this was the right thing to do, and Kyle, struggling with his own mental health issues and deeply enmeshed in the fantasy world Clara had built, believed her. He saw himself as a hero, a protector, someone saving Clara from a monster. He didn't see Robert Schwartz as a respected scientist, a father, a human being. He saw him as a villain in a story Clara had written. In 2002, Clara was convicted of first-degree murder as an accessory. She didn't kill her father with her own hands, but the law recognized that she was just as responsible. She had set everything in motion. She had manipulated a vulnerable young man into doing her dirty work. And in 2002, she was sentenced to 48 years in prison. Her defense team appealed, arguing that the court had overemphasized the role of fantasy games and that Clara's involvement was exaggerated. They painted her as a troubled young woman caught up in something she didn't fully control. But the appeals were rejected, most notably by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in 2010. The conviction stood. The sentence stood. Kyle Hulbert, the one who physically carried out the murder, received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Other accomplices who played smaller roles received lesser terms. But Clara and Kyle, the mastermind and the weapon, both got the harshest penalties. As of 2025, Clara Jane Schwartz remains at Fluvanna Correctional Center for Women in Virginia. She will not be eligible for release until the 2040s, when she'll be in her 60s. She has spent more than 2 decades behind bars, and she has many more to go. While the media often sensationalized the role of role-playing games, painting them as dangerous gateways to violence, the heart of the case was far more familiar. A daughter who came to view her parent as a mortal enemy. A young woman who, instead of seeking help or simply leaving, chose murder. And a vulnerable young man who was manipulated into believing the killing was heroic. Dr. Robert Schwartz was a brilliant scientist. He contributed to DNA research and biometrics. He had a career, colleagues, a life of meaning. And he was killed in his own home by someone who believed a fantasy story more than reality. His death wasn't random. It wasn't a burglary gone wrong. It was planned, deliberate, and carried out by people his daughter had convinced to see him as a threat. Clara's case raises difficult questions about manipulation, mental health, and accountability. Kyle Hulbert was clearly vulnerable. He had struggles that made him susceptible to influence. But does that absolve Clara? Or does it make her actions even more sinister, targeting someone she knew she could control? The courts decided Clara was guilty, fully, unequivocally guilty, and the sentence reflected that. 48 years, nearly half a century. By the time she's eligible for release, most of her life will have been spent in prison. Her father will have been dead for over 4 decades, and the fantasy world she built, the one that cost a man his life, will be long gone. As of 2025, Clara remains incarcerated. Kyle remains incarcerated, and Dr. Robert Schwartz remains dead. That's the reality. No fantasy, no game, just consequences. Case 11, Jamie Silvonek, March 2015, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. 54-year-old Cheryl Silvonek disappeared from her life. Within days, her body was discovered in a shallow grave near a pond. Her car had been driven into the water, submerged in an attempt to hide evidence. And the story that emerged was depressingly familiar. A mother trying to protect her daughter, and a daughter who saw that protection as a problem to be eliminated. Cheryl's 14-year-old daughter, Jamie Silvonek, had started a relationship with 20-year-old Army soldier Caleb Barnes. 20 years old. Jamie was 14. This wasn't a relationship, this was illegal, and Cheryl knew it. She objected loudly, firmly, and correctly. She saw the relationship for what it was: inappropriate, dangerous, and against the law. She tried to sever it. She called police. She worked to get Jamie away from Barnes. She did everything a protective mother is supposed to do. And for that, she was murdered. Instead of creating distance, the conflict welded Jamie and Barnes closer together. It gave them a common enemy, a shared obstacle. And in their twisted logic, the solution wasn't to wait, to be patient, to let Jamie grow up and make her own choices as an adult. The solution was to kill Cheryl so they could be together without interference. Text messages between Jamie and Barnes laid out planning discussions in chilling detail. They didn't just complain about Cheryl, they didn't just vent frustration, they discussed how they might kill her, when they would do it, what would happen after. This wasn't a fantasy, this wasn't venting, this was a conspiracy. On the night of March 14th to 15th, 2015, Caleb Barnes attacked Cheryl in the family SUV. He stabbed her, he strangled her, and Jamie was present. Not as a horrified witness, not as a victim, but as a fully complicit participant in the planning and aftermath. She didn't stop it, she didn't call for help, she didn't try to save her mother. She watched, she helped, she enabled. After Cheryl was dead, they attempted to hide the body, digging a shallow grave near a pond and dumping her there like she was nothing. Then they drove her car into the water, hoping it would sink, hoping the evidence would disappear. But it didn't. The car was found, the body was found, and the digital trail, those text messages, those planning discussions, was found. In 2016, Jamie pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. She didn't fight it, she didn't claim innocence. She admitted what she had done and accepted responsibility. She was sentenced to 35 years to life in prison. 35 years. Minimum before she's even eligible for parole. By the time that day comes, she'll be nearly 50 years old. Older than her mother was when she died. Caleb Barnes was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus additional years. He was the adult. He was the one who physically carried out the murder, and he will never walk free again. But here's where the story takes another turn. By 2025, Jamie has begun seeking commutation. She's arguing that she has matured, that she's engaged in education and rehabilitative work behind bars, that she's no longer the impressionable 14-year-old who helped plan her mother's killing. She's asking for a second chance, a reduction in her sentence, a path back to freedom. The local district attorney strongly opposes clemency, and it's not hard to see why. Cheryl Silvonek didn't get a second chance. She didn't get to mature, to grow, to change. She was stabbed and strangled in her own car by a man her daughter brought into her life. And Jamie didn't just stand by, she participated, she planned, she enabled. So the question becomes, does a 14-year-old who commits murder deserve a second chance? Does age, immaturity, and the influence of an older partner mitigate the crime enough to justify early release? Or does the brutality of the act, the premeditation, the betrayal, the fact that it was her own mother, mean some sentences should stand no matter how much someone claims to have changed? Jamie's case is painfully similar to Rachel Mullenix's on the other side of the country. A teenage girl, an older boyfriend, a mother trying to protect her daughter from an inappropriate relationship, and a murder plot that turned a normal parental boundary into a death sentence. The difference? Rachel is still serving her time without seeking early release. Jamie is asking for mercy. Whether any governor or parole board will one day see her case differently remains an open question. But as of 2025, she remains in a Pennsylvania prison. And the district attorney is making it clear Cheryl's life mattered, and her death should not be minimized because her killer was young. Cheryl Silvonek was 54 years old. She was a mother doing what mothers do, protecting her child, setting boundaries, trying to keep her safe. And for that, she was killed. Jamie Silvonek was 14 years old. She was a daughter who chose a boyfriend over her mother, who chose murder over patience, who chose to be complicit in violence rather than walk away. As of 2025, Cheryl is still dead. Caleb Barnes is still in prison for life. And Jamie? She's asking for freedom. But freedom is something her mother will never have again. Case 12. Patricia Patty Columbo. Some cases are so brutal they still shock decades later. This is one of them. May 4th, 1976. Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Police walked into a nightmare. 43-year-old Frank Columbo, his wife Mary, 41, and their 13-year-old son Michael were all dead. They had been shot, beaten with heavy objects, and stabbed. The violence was beyond excessive. It was frenzied, personal, rage-fueled. Michael alone had been stabbed nearly 100 times with scissors. 100 times. His injuries were so severe that investigators initially mistook them for a rash. Think about what it takes to stab someone 100 times. The time, the effort, the sustained, focused hatred. This wasn't a quick kill. This was annihilation. The scene was staged to look like a burglary or a mob hit. Items displaced. The family car abandoned in Chicago. Signs of forced entry. But detectives quickly suspected an inside connection. The staging was too obvious, the violence too personal. And when they started looking at who had motive, they didn't have to look far. Their attention focused on the couple's 19-year-old daughter, Patricia Patty Columbo, and her much older boyfriend, Frank DeLuca. Patty's parents strongly disapproved of the relationship. Frank DeLuca was significantly older, and they saw him as a bad influence, someone pulling their daughter away from the life they wanted for her. They tried to intervene, they set boundaries, they pushed back. And Patty, she resented them for it, deeply, bitterly, lethally. Investigators discovered that months before the murders, Patty and DeLuca had tried to hire a hitman. They provided photos of the family. They drew diagrams of the house. They discussed payment. They wanted someone else to do the dirty work so they could maintain plausible deniability. But those plans fell through. The hitman didn't follow through. So Patty and DeLuca did it themselves. The state's theory was clear. Patty resented her parents' opposition to the relationship. She disliked their rules, their expectations, their control, and she expected to inherit money and property once they were gone. Her 13-year-old brother, Michael, he was simply in the way, a witness, an obstacle. So he had to die too. On the night of May 4th, 1976, Patty and DeLuca entered the Columbo home and carried out one of the most brutal family annihilations in Illinois history. Frank was shot and beaten. Mary was shot and beaten. And Michael, a 13-year-old boy who should have been worrying about school, friends, and growing up, was stabbed nearly 100 times with scissors. The brutality suggests this wasn't just about money or freedom. This was personal. This was rage. This was a daughter who didn't just want her parents gone. She wanted them destroyed. In 1977, Patricia Columbo and Frank DeLuca were convicted. Patty received a staggering aggregate sentence of 200 to 300 years in prison for multiple counts, including murder, conspiracy, and solicitation to commit murder. DeLuca received a similarly crushing term. The message from the court was clear. You will never walk free. And for nearly 5 decades, that's been true. As the decades passed, Patty earned degrees behind bars. She became a counselor to other inmates. She participated in programs. She expressed remorse. She tried to show that she had changed, that the 19-year-old who helped slaughter her family was gone, replaced by someone who understood the weight of what she had done. But at parole hearings, including a high-profile one in 2024, Illinois officials have repeatedly denied release. They cite the extraordinary brutality of the murders, the triple victim count, the fact that one of the victims was a 13-year-old boy who was stabbed nearly 100 times, and they cite continuing doubts about her remorse. Is it genuine or is it performance? After nearly 50 years, can we ever really know? Patty remains incarcerated at Logan Correctional Center in Illinois. She is now in her late 60s. She has spent more time in prison than she spent free. Her entire adult life has been behind bars, and the parole board has made it clear that's where she belongs. Frank, Mary, and Michael Columbo have been dead for nearly 50 years. They didn't get to grow old. They didn't get second chances. They didn't get to earn degrees or counsel others or show they had changed. They got bullets, blunt force trauma, and scissors, and the person responsible, their own daughter and sister, is still alive, still breathing, still asking for freedom. Patty Columbo's case forces us to ask, is there a point where a crime is so brutal, so personal, so unforgivable that rehabilitation doesn't matter? Can someone who stabbed her 13-year-old brother nearly 100 times ever truly be safe to release? And if we believe in second chances, where do we draw the line? The parole board has drawn that line repeatedly. And as of 2225, Patty Columbo remains exactly where a jury decided she should be nearly 50 years ago, in prison for life. What do you think? Should someone like Patty ever be released? Comment below. That's all from us today. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, click the next video to dive into another case. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our content.